So last week we discussed how Robert Sakata has been nominated to lead the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Tobacco. And we discussed how many people who are on the right, Republicans, conservatives, they're seeing this as a victory because he is a pro-Second Amendment advocate. He's a very conservative person. He really believes in people's rights to defend themselves. However, we don't see this as a win because we didn't ask for a conservative to lead the ATF. We asked that the ATF be abolished because the ATF is consistently being used and weaponized against people like us, FFL holders, despite the fact that we are considered the first line of defense against illegal gun sales. We are still villainized by the ATF. So this story here that has since popped up, I think it really goes well with that. It says new legislations to strengthen ATF's enforcement power, countered to proposal cuts. In Congress, lawmakers introduced the ATF Improvement and Modernization Act, AIM Act, which would bolster the ATF's statutory auditory to crack down on illegal firearm trafficking and bad apple gun dealers. Today, U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen and U.S. Representative Don Beyer and Jamie Raskin introduced the ATF Improvement and Modernization legislation to strengthen the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearm, and Explosives' ability to combat gun crime and in our communities. The lawmakers' efforts come as the Trump administration seeks to undermine the ATF, including by working to eliminate it as a standalone agency, merging it with the Drug Enforcement Administration, and proposing a nearly 30% decrease in its budget. In face of these actions, the lawmakers' legislation would reassert the ATF's auditory to keep our communities safe, including by removing irresponsible statutory restrictions that stand in the way of the ATF's mission to protect the public from violent offenders, criminal organizations, and the illegal use and trafficking of firearms. Too many American lives have been torn apart by gun violence in our community. Yet gun industry hardliners have conspired to put up roadblocks that hamper law enforcement efforts to combat this deadly scourge. Our legislation eliminates these barriers and strengthens the ATF's ability to crack down on gun crime and illegal firearm trafficking that allows deadly weapons to fall into dangerous hands. This is a common-sense way to tackle the gun violence epidemic and to save lives, says Senator Van Hollen. The gun violence epidemic continues to take a huge toll on our country, killing nearly 50,000 Americans every year, said Representative Don Beyer. We cannot accept the Trump's effort to stop law enforcement from addressing gun violence, which includes mass transfers of agents away from the ATF. Congress owes it to the American families to take decisive action to ensure the ATF has the tools it needs to make America communities safer, and our AIM Act would do just that by removing barriers that hamper the ATF's mission. I appreciate Senator Van Hollen, Ranking Member Raskin, and the gun violence prevention leaders who worked with us to craft this important bill, and I urge my colleagues to support it. The AIM Act will revitalize the ATF's ability to crack down on gun traffickers and bad apple gun dealers, and overhaul outdated regulations that hinders the Bureau's ability to protect our communities, says Jamie Raskin. I'm proud to join this important effort to combat gun trafficking and violent crime. This legislation also enhances ATF's capacity to crack down on bad apple gun dealers, permitting stricter compliance requirements and reforming the rules. Government federal license revocation will ensure that firearm dealers comply with laws and regulations that protect the public from dangerous weapons. Once again, I think this kind of makes the point that we were making yesterday, or what we were making last week, and that's the ATF can be weaponized against us. And therefore, it's a problem because no matter who is right now, within the next 4 years, going to be head of the ATF, there's always the chance that with the next election, we can get somebody else who will not be pro-Second Amendment, who will not be supportive of FFLs and people's Second Amendment right. And so here we have Trump. He's in office, and he is trying to reduce the ATF's power. But we have all these men, all of whom are Democrats, and they're trying to basically do what Biden did, and that's he made it so The ATF could audit an FFL dealer over just the smallest, most minute issue. You forget to dot the I or cross the T in application, and that alone is enough to get audited. And we went into this last week. An FFL dealer is supposed to be the first line of defense against the sales of illegal firearms. And therefore, the ATF should be in harmony with FFLs, but instead they treat us like suspects. And I think this is a good example of it. It's like, oh, to crack down on bad apple dealers. It's like, we don't have an endemic of bad apple dealers. We do not have a bunch of complacent or a bunch of FFLs who are knowingly selling firearms illegally. And very rarely does a felon get his firearms through an FFL. They're not forging documents and then going to FFLs. They're not sliding them an extra 100 under the table so that they'll fake their applications. Drug dealers, felons, criminals, they're getting their firearms off streets, off other drug dealers, felons, criminals. They are getting them by stealing. They're getting them through illegal means. And so cracking down on FFLs does absolutely nothing but make it harder for law-abiding citizens to get their firearms. And I think in the end, that is the actual point. It's not really about protecting us from illegal activity as much as it's just making legal activity more difficult.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. And, you answered my first question as you were reading that article was, this must be a bunch of Democrats, right? It's like, here we are again, just trying to apply more gun control just in a different way. It's like, that's exactly what it is. They're just trying to give them more control. And you're right. I mean, they're targeting the FFLs. We're the first line of defense. You're right. We don't really have an epidemic of bad FFLs out there. And look, if there's an FFL that's doing something illegal or doing that, absolutely audit them, absolutely go after them, take them out. We don't need that. If that's happening, then enforce it. But it just sounds like another measure for gun control and for the ATF to be able to go after us, like you were saying. And yeah, I mean, look, everything that we do is documented. They could walk in here right now, do an audit, and see it. And if I've messed up something, or they found out that I was issuing something on fraudulently or doing stuff under the table, it's going to get found out. So I mean, it's like the last things most FFLs are doing is committing these crimes. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't some bad ones out there that need to be taken down for sure, but like, we have to go through licensing and permitting and background checks and spend all this money, and most people who are becoming FFL dealers aren't going to drop thousands of dollars to get all this done just to start committing crimes so they can issue guns illegally to criminals. I mean, yeah, they're getting them off the streets. And we've talked about this, we've already determined gun control doesn't work. Some of the most violent cities in our nation have the most strict gun control laws. And implementing more gun control doesn't help the situation. You're just, like you said, you're just going after the law-abiding citizens, the good people, the first line of defense, to stop them from getting the guns. And the thing is, we want to give the ATF more leeway, more power, more enforcement, as that thing says. And it's like, well, let's think about this for a second here. The ATF was established in 1972, so 53 years the ATF has been around. And we ask ourselves, like, well, what have they done? Can we see statistics over the last 53 years of them actually reducing gun crime, gun violence? Now, one of the key terms that I heard when you were reading that was gun deaths. They want to bring up gun deaths all the time nationwide. 50,000 gun deaths nationwide. And that number sounds bad. It is. But they use gun deaths instead of using gun crimes or gun violence, because that's a big difference. And, I look at some peer-reviewed articles here, And we talk about, this is over the last 50 years, from actually over 50 years, from 1968 to 2023. Gun suicides have increased in the U.S. in recent years, but gun murders have fallen since 2021. So if we go, this goes back to 1968. It details suicides and murders. In 1968, there were 9,425 gun murders and 10,911 suicides. As of 2023, there were 17,927 murders and 27,300 suicides. So that's like 48,000 something as of, actually, this was 2021, as of 2021. So there were like 48,000 gun deaths nationwide in 2021. So when you talk about that, you go, dang, 48,000. But like over half of that was from suicides, 27,300 from suicides. And I'm not saying that I don't want to reduce those numbers. I don't want people killing themselves through guns anyway. I don't want people killing themselves anyway. But if you say gun violence or gun crimes, and this is only accounting for murder, it was 17,927. So that's less than half of gun deaths nationwide that resulted in some kind of crime or violence. So they use gun deaths all the time to increase the number. You know, it's like saying, oh, there are X amount of traffic fatalities every year. That's why we need to crack down on DUI. But DUI doesn't encompass all traffic fatalities, and murder and gun violence doesn't encompass all gun deaths. But it's a bigger number and it sounds better. But the point of bringing that up is, well, the ATF has been established for 53 years, and all we see is these numbers increasing. And you go, well, what has the ATF done? What have they implemented? I mean, the ATF has implemented things like Project Guardian, a nationwide initiative launched by the U.S. Attorney's Office to reduce gun violence and enforce federal firearm laws that focus on investigating, prosecuting, and preventing gun crimes. The Bipartisan Safer Communities Act is a landmark act aimed at reducing gun violence and protecting communities. It includes provision for enhanced background checks, funding for state crisis intervention program, and criminal offenses for gun trafficking and straw purchases. They've had other things like the boyfriend loophole, which addresses straw purchases and domestic violence and things like that. They've implemented all these things, gun control, to reduce gun deaths nationwide, but we have yet to see a reduction in gun deaths or gun violence. But let's just use gun deaths because that's the number they're using. We haven't seen a reduction in that in the last 50 years. All we've seen is it go up. So what has the ATF done other than, you know, you've made points before, things like Waco and what was it, Ruby Ridge? I mean, you know, so it's like, they have not reduced gun crimes, gun violence, gun deaths. All
To be fair, all those people they burned alive during Waco, there's a 0% chance any of them will ever suffer a gun death.
Wow. Okay, so they were just burned alive, and most of them never even touched a gun. The ATF has done nothing to reduce gun deaths, gun violence, gun crimes, gun murders, whatever, however you want to say it, since they've been established. But these Democratic congressmen and senators and representatives are trying to give them more power and more money to reduce gun violence, but they haven't. So to your point, all they're doing is just coming after the FFLs, and it's like, well, they're not getting them from us anyway. we have been open 2 years now, and we've denied our fair share of people who we didn't feel like, even before even doing the background checks, we didn't feel like should be getting a gun. And it's like, yeah, they're getting them off the street. So all you're doing is just implementing gun control on the law-abiding citizens and the people like us who are just the first line of defense, like we said.
Now, another thing I'd like to mention, because you talked about gun deaths and you said, well, some are suicide. Do they also count accidental gun deaths? Somebody discharges their firearm on accident.
Not that I see in this specific article. I'm sure there's probably something in there somewhere.
So I would ask, okay, how many of those gun deaths are violent gun deaths? Obviously, it's violent in itself to be shot. But what I mean is assault by somebody else, meaning ill intention or harm. If you reduce how many are accidental and how many are suicides, what number do we have? And if that's reduces it significantly, it looks like what we really need to focus on is help for the mentally ill and better firearm education and training to prevent accidents.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I mean, we have, we see that all the time. A negligent discharge or something kills themselves or somebody else, and having that training and education is extremely important. But then some people will argue is like, well, you're still you yourself, even though you're a Second Amendment advocate, are still implementing gun control because you're like, I can't have a gun until I'm safe with it. I got to show that I've had some proper training. And it's like, so if I don't show proper training and education, I can't have a gun. And it's like, well, no. I talked about it before, was like, nobody's, well, I don't want to say nobody. Some states don't even allow you to have the guns in your house. But it's like, you can have the gun in your house, but we're talking about the difference between carrying on your person and carrying in your house. And it's like, we don't want people driving vehicles down the road where they can be a danger to themselves and others unless they've shown that they know how to drive and they're safe to drive, because it's not about just their lives. It's about, you're endangering everybody else's lives if you get behind the wheel and you don't know how to drive and maintain proper road laws and road rules and stuff, because you're going to kill somebody. So it's like, yeah, I don't want to infringe on your Second Amendment right, but you carrying a gun is just not about you. It's about everyone else. And if you can't demonstrate that you know how to use it safely and properly, you could be a danger to everyone else. So, and yourself. And, to your point is like, well, what are the statistics on negligent discharge deaths and things like that? And can we reduce those with more education and training? Yeah, I believe so. But again, I say it a lot. I don't know the answer to that. How could we implement that without infringing on people's rights?
I mean, you've heard me say it before, and I will probably end up saying it again at some point. I think it should be mandatory curriculum for high schoolers. Firearm handling, safety, familiarization. It should be senior year of high school. You go through an 8-week course where it teaches you everything there is to know about firearms. And you now have the information you need to handle a firearm safely, because sometimes things happen and you find yourself needing to handle a firearm. I can remember being a kid, my grandmother had passed away and we were cleaning out her closet, going through all her stuff and getting rid of things and giving stuff away, and we found 2 rifles. And my mom did not have a clue what to do. She didn't know how to tell if they were real or not. She didn't know how to tell if they were loaded or not. And if they were loaded, she didn't know how to empty them. And my grandfather is like, oh, look, my rifles. I haven't seen those in a while. And he decided he wanted to pull them out and clean them and play with them, fiddle with them. And he's sitting in a chair with his rifle and a rag, just wiping it down. And my mom was at her wit's end because she didn't know what he knew. And in her mind, that thing could go off any moment and kill somebody. And so she made me and my sister go outside until he put the gun away. Now, that would not happen to me. If I found somebody's rifles, I would know what to do. I would know how to empty it. I would know how to check to see if there was anything chambered. I would know how to break it down and make it so there was absolutely no way anything could happen. And the thing is, you don't have to want to hunt or want to carry in order to need this information. Sometimes things happen. And it would have been better for my mother to be able to just take it, be able to tell if there was something in the chamber or not, know how to drop the magazine, know how to empty it, know how to put a lock on it, and be like, there, I now can feel confident that this is not a danger to any of my children. And I hear about it all the time. You hear about it all the time. It's like people who never bothered learning about firearms because they never intended to own one suddenly comes across one. There's more firearms in America than there are people. I think like right now, I think like everybody could have like a gun and a half or something like that. And so the idea that you will never ever come across one, you'll never be in somebody's home and find one on a shelf, you'll never be out in the woods and stumble across one hidden under a pile of leaves, you'll never find yourself after somebody dies and you're hauling away their stuff, you'll never come across a gun. It's just unreasonable. The chances are high, and it's good for you to know what to do in that circumstance, even if you don't personally believe in guns, even if you do not personally want one.
Well, I agree. I actually found that question that you asked on that article. Though they tend to get less public attention than gun-related murders, suicide have long accounted for the majority of U.S. gun deaths. In 2023, 58% of all gun-related deaths in the U.S. were suicide, while 38% were murders. The remaining gun deaths that year involved law enforcement. Let me go back and start that again, because I'm going to read these numbers. Though they tend to get less public attention than gun-related murders, suicides have long accounted for the majority of U.S. gun deaths. In 2023, 58% of all gun-related deaths in the U.S. were suicides, 27,300, while 38% were murders, 17,927. The remaining gun deaths that year involved law enforcement, 604, were accidental, 463, or had undetermined circumstances, 434.
Yeah, and that's something I didn't even consider is they're also counting in justified shootings.
Right.
When somebody defends themselves, when a cop has to pull a firearm on somebody because they are a danger to others or to them, the times when a judge and jury would say justified, not guilty, they're also counting that in order to fearmonger this idea that everywhere you go, there's people who are out to kill you, and therefore they need to protect you by doubling down on legal gun sales.
Right. And then I guess people could turn around and say, well, if we have more people killing themselves every year than we have gun violence, why don't we have more strict gun control? Why don't we take away the guns? Because, well, more people kill themselves. It's like, okay, well, we take away the guns, the criminals still got them, so all we're going to do is see the gun-related crimes and violence go up. And it says the number of gun deaths in 2023, 46,278, was the third highest total on record, trailing only the two previous years. Gun murders rose dramatically during the coronavirus pandemic. Wow. But fell in the recent years. So again, we're looking at over a 50-year span from 1968 to 2023, and all we've done is seen a rise. It peaked really high in the early 90s, dropped back down in the early 2000s, and then all of a sudden in like 2016 and up, it just went up and up and up and up. And it's like, okay, well, the ATF has been around for 53 years, and all we've seen is gun violence rising, let's take away gun deaths. Let's just take away the suicides and negligent discharges. And according to this article, 400 extra that were undetermined. We're still seeing gun violence rise every year, even with the implemented gun control acts that they've created, and it's done nothing to reduce it. So by giving them more power, more gun control, more regulations, which specifically goes after FFLs, all you're going to do, again, is put more scrutiny on the people who are actually trying to do good and actually follow the law than going after the criminals. I want to see somebody make a bill that's going to go after the criminals. Not, they specifically lined it out in that thing that you just read, going after the FFLs, and that's exactly what it is. The ATF is going after the FFLs. They're regulating us, which, again, if we have some bad apples out there, then take care of that. But for the most part, we don't have a pandemic of bad FFLs out there issuing guns out to people. So why are we giving them more money? They've done nothing. They've done nothing to do what they were designed to do. So why would we want to give them more power?
But that has always been how it is with the with the ATF. The ATF began with just enforcing the prohibition movement, and the illegal alcohol sales went absolutely through the roof, to the degree that I remember reading about a detective, and he crossed the Canadian border, and he wanted to see how long will it take me to find some illegal alcohol. So he crosses the Canadian border, he gets in a taxi cab, and he says to the taxi cab driver, I'm hoping while I'm here I'll be able to find some alcohol somewhere. And the taxi cab driver literally opened his glove box and said, oh yeah, here, I got this, I can sell it to you. And it was 15 minutes. That's how long it took him, 15 minutes, to find somebody selling bootlegged alcohol. And I read about 5-year-old kids walking to school, and they had alcohol hidden in their books to sell to people on the way. It went crazy, and it created the mafia. Like, all that stuff with the mafia and the gang violence came from the prohibition and the ATF, so it was just the A at the time, I guess, inability to do their job. And instead of saying, you suck, and abolishing it like the government should have, they said, let's give them more power. We'll now give them power over tobacco. Oh, and now we'll give them power over firearms. Oh, and now we'll give them explosives. And so this is what we have done since the beginning of the ATF, is we just add more and more and more power to them, despite the fact that they mess up and mess up and mess up. And it's like, how much do you have to suck before the government says, okay, never mind, this is not worth it?
And why federal? Why do we have a federal firearms agency? I think I said it last week or one in a previous podcast. Each state has a department of enforcement that enforces state regulations. Tennessee has the ABC, Alcoholic Beverage Commission. Tennessee has TBI. And the Department of Private Protective Services and the Department of Commerce and Insurance, and all these law enforcement agencies just within the state that's regulating alcohol, that's regulating tobacco, that's regulating firearms and things like that. And it's like, so why do we need a federal agency when the states are, because again, we talked about it last week, having a nationwide standard, but we don't have a nationwide standard. You and I have experienced it firsthand since we've had our FFL. You can ask one ATF agent something and then ask another ATF agent the same exact question and get two different answers. And that's not how it should be. So if we are going to enforce gun laws, should it not be just at a state level? Because each state has different laws regarding gun laws, because the ATF don't even know their own laws. They don't even have regulations. They're not even laws. They're just made up rules. And half the time, the agents don't even know the answers to them. And the agents have different answers to the same questions. And it's like, what good are they?
But at the same time, despite all that, if we get it wrong, we go to jail.
Right. Yeah. If we, like you said, we forget to dot an I or cross a T, or God forbid, I sell a gun and forget to log it out of my A&D book, which, you know, we're pretty good about getting that done. But let's just say, for instance, we forget to log it out of the A&D book. They come and do a random audit, and they're like, where's this gun? And we're like, oh, we have to go through it. And then they're like, oh, we just forgot to log it out. Here's the paperwork. We get fined for it, or we could lose our license, or we can go to jail. And it's like, it's ridiculous, you know, that we, both of us, know firsthand also that there are several people around here that are selling guns without an FFL. You know, I've had customers come in here before and be like, oh, I've bought 5 guns off of Joe Schmo down the road. He sells guns out of his storage shed or something like that. It's like, should we enforce that? Yeah, I guess, because is he selling stolen guns? He's selling guns to people. Now he's not doing background checks. He's not doing that kind of stuff. And I've told people before, it's like, either we're all going to do it or we're not. None of us are going to do it. And, you know, if we take away the background checks and the forms, then it's like, well, how do we determine if somebody's a felon or not? But it's like, you're going after the people who, again, like I said, dropped all the money to get the licenses and get the background checks and all that kind of stuff. We went through a hassle for 8 months before we got approved to do our to get our FFL. Why would we want to invest all that time and money into getting an FFL to start selling guns illegally to criminals? You know, you're trying to enforce regulations on people who are actually trying to follow the laws. Not even the laws. They are not laws. That's why each state is different. That's why each ATF agent can't even answer the questions. You know, you talked about it before about the whole electronic A&D book. You know, this was information they gave straight to us. Our ATF agent sent me a link that specifically said you can create an electronic A&D form, and if you're going to do it, it has to be this, 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 and this. And it even said if you're going to use an Excel spreadsheet, it has to have this, this, and this. I created the Excel spreadsheet per the guidelines that they sent me, and then he said, oh, you can't use that. It's like, they don't even know what they're talking about half the time. So what good is it giving them more funding to create more BS rules and regulations that aren't helping in the first place? Because statistics show that it's done nothing to reduce gun violence nationwide.
Well, since you touched in on all we had to go through to get our FFL license, I would also like to mention that we literally almost went out of business waiting, because we had to create our business. We had to have our location. So, which means we had to find the building that you're sitting in now and begin renting it, paying monthly for utilities, for rent, and then we apply, and it takes them 8 months to approve us, which means 8 months of sitting in an empty freaking building, waiting and waiting. They took the money pretty fast. I mean, we had to, what was it, $200, I think, to apply. And that, man, they sucked that check pretty fast. But we waited and waited. We contacted them. They say, yeah, it's pending. And people would come in, look around, and see this empty freaking building. And they'd say, oh, still no guns, huh? And to this day, we still have people walk in. Even though we have been open for 2 years, and only 8 of those, that first 8 months, we didn't have any guns because we were waiting for our freaking FFL to be approved. And to this day, people will walk in and go, oh, you have guns now. I didn't know. I had one cop come in, and he told me someone had told him we don't sell guns. Because that person had came in, and I told them we were still waiting. I think he'd came in a couple times, and at this point the guy concluded it's never gonna happen. And so he had told this cop, yeah, they don't sell guns. So he had came in and he said, well, it looks like you sell guns. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, it's a gun store. He's like, yeah, well, a buddy of mine told me you guys don't sell guns. And it's like, I am hard pressed to believe that that was not intentional, because, you know, it's like in freaking Fallout, where they say the greatest weapon you have against your enemies is time. You wait it out. And it's like, are you waiting for us to say, oh, good, we've been approved, but we have no money for inventory now because we spent all of it on an empty building? Or, well, that's good, but, you know, we're out of business. We had to bring in, you know, we were bringing in other stuff like military surplus, memorabilia, political stuff, art, you know, things like that. Stuff that matched our niche, you know, knives and ammo, you know, and we were saying, yeah, guns are coming, but people would say, well, do you know where I can go to get a gun? Because they're not going to wait. And we'd say, yeah, you know, in Sweetwater, there's a gun store. And we're sending them to our competitor because, I mean, I'm not going to tell them, no, I don't know, when I do know where a gun is being sold. So, you know, and I say, yeah, but, you know, hopefully when you go to buy again, you'll come to us. And it's like, our business is damaged to some degree or another because of the first 8 months of us not being able to carry guns, despite the fact that we immediately applied. It's not like we sat on our thumbs for the first 7 months and now are complaining that it took a month. We got our location, signed the contract, immediately applied for that FFL because we intended to sell guns. And it took them almost a year to approve it.
Yeah, so I mean, it did take them a long time to get our application done. I mean, they even came down here and had to do an interview with us and talk to us and check security of our business and ask if we had cameras, if we had cages on the door, how we were planning on securing the firearms at night when we left. And then they went over how to fill out the forms and everything. And it was just, and then still even after that, it took a couple months after the interview. So I mean, it really did take a long time. And I mean, I agree, it just kind of hindered our business for the first 8 months because we're a gun store that didn't have guns. So you know, what more do they want to do to FFLs with that?
I mean, is there any other businesses that would happen to? Can you imagine, like, you start a Dollar General and the Dollar General has to sit empty for the first 8 months before they can start offering their products? Or you're selling you're a used car salesman. It's like you got to open it up and then get your license. More people die from vehicles, but that's not happening.
Right, and you're right. I mean, there really was no way around it because we had to apply for the license based on the location we're going to be at. It's not like we could have applied for the license, waited to get it, and then open the store. It's like we had to have the store. We had to take pictures of the store. They had to come in and look at the store, and it's like, yeah, there's no way to like get the licensing done and then open a store. You know, so it was quite a hassle for us for the first 8 months there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we can conclude the ATF doesn't help anybody. It's not good for anybody. It's not useful to anybody. But it's a good virtue signaler for Democrats because they can say, I am working with the ATF. I support the ATF. And it's like wearing a COVID mask when we all knew it didn't do anything. Anybody who knows about pathogens know. It's like one person had said a quote that I liked very much. He said, if you can smell a fart through your mask, COVID can make it through your mask. If you can't smell a fart through your mask, you died because you can't breathe. And it's like, it did nothing. And yet they forced everybody to wear them. And those who didn't wear them were seen as antisocial because it wasn't about it helping. It was a virtue signal. It was something you could wear on your person to show that you wanted to help, I guess. I don't know. Just show a willingness. And those who said, this doesn't do anything. What does do something is washing my hands and not constantly touching my face and things like that. That all makes sense. But like doctors and nurses, they don't constantly wear a mask. They only wear a mask if they are like in close proximity to somebody. Like for instance, if they're doing surgery, they're going to wear a mask so they don't accidentally sneeze or, to breathe. And but the fact of the matter is they're not wearing it nonstop because because they know that doesn't help. But suddenly wearing a rag on your face was just this magical way to prevent any and all pathogens from spreading. When in reality, it's like, no. What it did was, while I was wearing it and I sneezed, I had a sneeze stuck to my face. Instead of me turning around, sneezing into a napkin, because I actually grabbed one out of habit. And it's like, well, now what? I'm working in food service. And I have a sneeze stuck to my face. And there are no masks available. I gotta wear this thing. And anytime it slips down, I'm gonna have to touch it. I am infecting people's food more than I am protecting it. And it's like, all we had to do was the things that we already knew you do to keep from spreading germs. But it was a virtue signal thing. It was I care about other people, so I'm gonna wear this on my face. And it's like, well, then get a t-shirt that says I care about other people. But caring about other people doesn't force them to wear a useless mask. And ATF is very much the same way. We got these Democrats and Democratic representatives, and they are saying, oh yeah, we're gonna help. We're making these new legislations with the ATF. And it's like, the ATF has never done anything. The ATF never will do anything. But it looks good, especially to people who are ignorant about the ATF and ignorant about what the ATF has done and what the ATF has not done. And you can say, yeah, I worked with the ATF. And it's like, it is basically the same as Republicans saying they support the NRA. What has the NRA really done besides just, comradeship, like, yeah, I'm part of the NRA, you're part of the NRA. Oh, that's great. Look at us. We're both part of the NRA. Hell yeah, America. But it's like, I don't think the NRA has ever actually done anything useful. It's just whatever, NRA. But backing the NRA as a Republican looks good. You can be like, yeah, I support the NRA. I was a member. And it's like, oh, well, he supports the NRA. Yeah, well, he's one of us. Cool. And that's it. Like, there we go. It's the beginning, middle, and end of it. And that is how the ATF is. The ATF is just the anti-NRA.
Except ATF has enforcement powers.
Yeah, I mean, the NRA basically just tells Republicans where to throw rocks. This person doesn't support your right to bear arms. You should write your representative and tell them not to vote for this, but yeah, it's just, the NRA can't put no one in jail.
Yep.
If we want to change subjects, I sent you a video that you can watch, and it's, I find it very ironic for two reasons. And one is, the left has always been pushing the narrative that we actually couldn't do anything against a tyrannical government. They basically go, the AR-15 is a military-grade weapon, and no citizen should have that, and blah, blah, blah. But then at the same time, they go, you really think it would make a difference? They have tanks. They have bombs. All you have are AR-15s. So it doesn't make a difference. So you might as well surrender them. And also, the irony of this video is what constitutes a tyrannical government is very different to a person on the right side of the aisle versus someone on the left. So I want to roll the video, and I think it'll make more sense what I'm getting at once you roll the video, and you can tell me what you think.
Why aren't we shooting back at them? Can anybody explain that to me? What, like, I don't own a firearm, but if I saw an ICE agent, it would brick right to their fucking dome. So why are the armed citizens not shooting back at them? Just a question.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking stupid. Like, is that not a call to arms? Should we not be going and arresting her now for that? I mean, you know, why aren't we shooting at them? Because they're federal law enforcement, you know, executing federal orders to deport illegal immigrants. It's like, what the? People are fucking stupid, man. That pisses me off so much. It's like,
I mean, is she not admitting, though, that the Second Amendment is an effective way to deal with a tyrannical government by suggesting that we should take up our arms and protect illegal immigrants from ICE agents? Now, whether or not you agree with whether or not it's justified or it's moral or right to take up firearms against ICE agents, you're still insinuating, or I think you should still agree that she's insinuating that the Second Amendment works.
yeah, take it away, we won't be able to do that. Not to mention, basically what she's saying is she doesn't own a gun. She doesn't plan on owning a gun. So she wants us, the people who do carry guns, to protect her. So if we did have a tyrannical government, what is she going to do? She's going to run behind somebody and say, why aren't you protecting us?
Yeah, that is true, and I actually didn't even take that into consideration, but yeah, that is what she's saying. And who are the majority gun owners? Conservatives, right-wing, Christians, Republicans, all people who she hates. And those are the people that she's saying, those are the people who she's saying, the government is getting tyrannical, protect us. I wasn't willing to, so now you gotta do it. It reminds me of the people who tell their doomsday prepper friends, well, if she hits the fan, I'm going to come move in with you. It's like, yay, a leech. Totally what I want during doomsday.
Yeah, and the people that you're asking to shoot back don't agree with you. It's like, I don't think we have a tyrannical government. Therefore, I'm on the ICE side. So guess you're SOL, aren't you? I mean, you know, but yeah. And they often don't think about the fact that it's both foreign and domestic, you know, right to bear arms to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. But it's also the reason why since 1814 we haven't had, you know, troops on our soil. And it's like, you know, in Pearl Harbor, military strategists said that if the Japanese would have invaded our land after Pearl Harbor, they would have probably made it to the Mississippi River before we would have been able to stop them, or our military would have been able to stop them. And then when they interviewed these generals, they were like, "No, that's not true. You know, the citizens have more guns than our military does, and you know, we didn't invade because that's what would happen." But I mean, yeah, the thing is, like, they don't support guns, but then they use guns to, you know, support their First Amendment rights, and then they're asking gun owners to defend them now. It's like, no, I don't agree with you. I agree with
telling the people who voted for this to put a stop to this with an amendment that she wants to put an end to.
Right.
And if she gets arrested, she'll say, what about free speech? But what I was getting at when I first brought it up is...
And I bet you she wouldn't, you know?
No.
She's like, I saw an ICE agent, brick. I bet you she wouldn't. I bet you if ICE agents came up to her, she wouldn't.
Nah, she doesn't look like the bricking type. She looks like the bitching type, but not the bricking type. But, you know, in her mind, this is a tyrannical government because they are removing non-citizens. But here's the thing about the gun owner side. We believe a tyrannical government is one that acts like Britain, where they're prioritizing foreigners over the citizens and allowing an open border, allow their people to be invaded, and allow all that comes with it. Britain is arresting people for saying I love bacon and for complaining on the internet about the fact that taxes and health care are going to these people. Britain is arresting 12-year-old girls who feel the need to protect themselves with a hatchet against grown men. Britain is putting people, or going and confiscating people's sword collection and calling it removal of deadly weapons from the street. That is a tyrannical government. What we're doing is the exact opposite. We are saying, no, you people aren't welcome here. And if you will not leave on your own, we will force you out. So, and she's calling that tyranny. That's not tyranny. That's protecting yours and your own. If any one of the immigrants that we have removed, the illegal aliens that we had removed, had actually become real immigrants, if any one of them taken the citizen's test, became a citizen, and wanted to support the American dream, and acted like an American, simulated to the culture, we would be happy to have him or her. You cannot find a single person who, like, I would say, I would tell anybody this, okay? Go on TikTok. Go on a small town page on Facebook and come up with this BS story about somebody, a friend, a fiance, whatever, who has just moved here from Somalia, Argentina, Mexico, whatever, and say, after so many years of waiting, he has finally gotten to do his citizenship test, and he has become an American citizen. He is so excited, and we are celebrating with, and just say like the most American thing you can imagine, like with apple pie and fried chicken. And find me a single conservative, a single Republican who is going to be like, oh, I don't want that person here. No, what they're going to get is they are going to get a tons of congratulations. We're glad to have you here. We're so happy you're here. Because we want people who love our country to live in our country. And the people who are willing to work to be here are the people who love it here. You have somebody with a thick foreign accent who you can tell English is not their first language, and they're chanting USA, that person gets nothing but love. But these are not the people who chant USA. These are the people who hold a Mexican flag and have no intention of ever assimilating into our culture. And if you want to assimilate, leave.
Well, yeah, I agree on a lot of those things you said, and it's just funny how they constantly go back and forth, and I don't even really think they know what they want or have any clue on any of it. They're just kind of going with the flow. But anyway, if you have any comments or questions or anything you want to talk about, disagree with, feel free to ask them and comment, and we'll talk about it constructively and go from there.
I would love to hear from Second Amendment supporters who are not American born. People who are immigrated here to America and who are happy to be here, who support what is happening with ICE. I typically get annoyed when people cut in line, and that's a pretty big line to cut. And who are Second Amendment supporters. And I would ask them, how do you think your country of origin would be different if you people were allowed to have firearms and had a Second Amendment?
Yeah, that's true. Leave a comment or question, and if you want us to talk about something else, let us know.